welcome to the Cinnabar. Now, if you've been watching the channel lately, you've probably seen a couple of episodes that we did from the Cody Firearms Museum out in Cody, Wyoming. Now, one of the highlights of that visit was getting to stop by the records office and chat with Jessica Bennett and the rest of the folks there in the office about the records that are stored there in the museum. And it's not just the Winchester factory records, but the factory records from several American manufacturers. And we'll even take a look at some of the ledger pages and see what they go through when they try to interpret what's on those when we send in asking for a record search or a factory letter. Now, sadly, you'll see a fellow who's been a long-time volunteer by the name of Gary Mazur actually looking up some of the records while we're talking. And Gary, sadly and unexpectedly, passed away the day after we did this filming. So I'd like to send our deepest condolences to Gary's family and to his co-workers there in the records office. I'm sure his loss has left a heck of a hole there in Cody. Gary was just a heck of a nice guy and an avid collector. In fact, one of our episodes last winter, we fixed a Cooper early percussion double action revolver for Gary. So this episode's dedicated to the memory of Gary Mazur. Here we are in the records office of the Cody Firearms Museum in Cody, Wyoming. And if you are interested in the factory records for your Winchester, Savage, Marlin, Ithaca, A.H. Fox, L.C. Smith, this is where the magic happens. This is where you can get your searches done on the factory records or get your really beautiful factory letter made. Now I'm here with Jessica Bennett, firearms specialist with the Cody Firearms Museum, her assistant Angela Bertolot, and we've got our volunteer Gary here who does a lot of the legwork to talk about these factory records and kind of how it came to pass that Cody came in possession of them and how things have progressed since they initially showed up here at the museum. Jessica?
All of the fun is on me, right? So at Winchester, when they sent the collection out to Cody, they also sent their records. They had been digitized, well, not digitized, they had been microfilmed before they got to us. And so in the mid-1970s, staff and volunteers here at the museum started doing searches and factory letters. That all progressed using the microfilm for many, many years. And when I got here in 2006, we were still using the microfilm, handwriting each search, sending copies out, and at that point we're emailing searches out to people by manually entering every single search into an email. In 2009, we got all of the microfilm digitized. So they scanned all of that microfilm and created a way for us to pull up the image of a page really quickly. And we were able to go then from having to run through the microfilm machine. If have you ever used a microfilm machine? Yeah. They're so fun. I love them actually. So we were able to then pull up the page we wanted and then handwrite everything out and email things out and mail things out. Then in 2013, we were able to take that digital images and created a whole new search system. So all we have to do is put in the serial number, hit a button, and it'll show us which page to open up. But we also now have a computer search form that we can fill out. And so it really has made our system a lot easier. When you're looking at 3.5 million plus Winchester records, and in total, with all of our manufacturers, we have about 15.6 million individual records for firearms. So automation as much as we can, while still making sure that we're a human is looking at it and interpreting it correctly, is vitally important that we go as computery as we can to be able to actually get all of our work done.
Well, one of the things that's just so critical for us collectors is your accessibility. I mean, I can be looking at a firearm somewhere clear across the country and get on the phone if it's during working hours, of course, and get Angela or Jessica on the phone and make sure that the gun that I'm looking at and I'm going to invest a great deal of money in potentially is correct in the way it left the factory. And if not, we can send off and get an email search done. And usually they come back, if it's early in the day, a lot of times they come back the same day, and if not the next day, or I don't think I've ever gone 2 days until those records were in my hands. So I mean, it's a fabulous service that they provide, and what an incredible resource. You know, so some of the other records that are available, it can take months or even up to a year to get some of those records, and you know, you don't have that kind of time to make a decision on a firearm that you're looking at purchasing.
We always want to go back to the original, whether it's a digital image or not, because that way you don't lose you think about the telephone game, right? So if you actually do the data entry and try to recreate the information that's on there, then there's a bigger chance that you're going to lose continuity in what you're doing. So as an archivist, we go back to the original as often as we can so that we can go, that is what it actually says. And so it clarifies it to a lot better. You don't lose, you know, like say 5 people down the road, somebody may have misread an A or an O or something and really mess up what they were saying. And
you know, some of it, I'm sure, when you get a firearm that has a lot of options, it can get pretty cluttered, and trying to interpret all that may be really difficult. And I could imagine that it would be a situation where knowing what how the gun is optioned currently might help to kind of interpret, well, what do those things say? And you look at the gun and see, well, it's got this option currently, well, then that makes sense, that this is what it's supposed to mean. And of course, I'm sure that there were a lot of different people with a lot of different handwriting writing in those ledgers at the time.
Oh yeah, totally. And you know, it's a whole language that we've learned over the years. Angela's been with us 5 years. I've been at it for 17. Gary's been with us 13 years. And you just learn the code that each of these manufacturers used. Sometimes it's different from manufacturer to manufacturer, but they were all pretty logical in what they were doing. As far as, you know, what a CSPG or a PLPG, and you know, that's all of the weird little codes that you see in there but we still, on a daily basis, we still will call a conference. Is kind of what we call it, is we get as many people in to look at something as we can to try to figure out something that we've never seen before. I would say almost on a daily basis that we see something that we haven't looked at. I don't think I've looked at each of these records in my 17 years doing this yet. You know, because we're not going to look at them until somebody asks for them.
Oh, sure, that makes sense. How long does it take it looks like you've got, you know, pretty good continuity with the people that are looking up the records now, but say a new person come in, is there a certain learning curve or time that it takes to really be able to interpret some of this handwriting in records?
I'd say it's probably if we were to have someone new come in fresh, I'd say about 4 to 6 months until they're reasonably comfortable with the standard stuff. But like I say, we're full decades into this, and we still ask each other what we think something will mean. So, but it's probably a good 3 to 6 months before we really want to cut someone loose and let them start looking up things without a lot of guidance. And we still, because we're humans and we're looking at handwriting all the time, we double check everything. Every search and every letter has 2 sets of eyeballs at least that have checked them out.
That's fantastic.
So that we try to catch mistakes. They do still slip through on us. We do, you know, we're not completely perfect, even though we like to think we are. But we make sure that every single search and every single letter gets looked at least twice. So we're looking at a model 1885 ledger page right now. And what I'm showing you right now is the difference between, well, the really hard to read stuff that we find with the microfilm. So we were talking about how they microfilmed it in the 1970s, so it is a black and white photograph of the ledger page. Unfortunately, I may mess everything up here. Unfortunately, focus becomes a problem. So we would have a really difficult time looking at trying to read a record down here like this. So, because it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of information in these 1885 records. And when the focus is off, then it makes everything very difficult. So as we've been able to, when we find a record that is horrendous to read, we have started rescanning. So this is a color scan of that same page of records in the 1885s. And you can see down here in the same lower corner, now you can read what it says.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the vital things that we're doing, that we're wanting to do, is to eventually replace those microfilm images with scanned images. That's going to be down the road when we find funding, as well as once we have the Savage, Ithaca, and A.H. Fox records scanned in the system. We have mostly usable images for Winchester, so we'll continue with those. But when necessary, we'll replace them with color scans.
Great. Well, that made one heck of a difference. I don't know how you'd even interpret. In fact, the autofocus on the camera was going crazy trying to figure out what was there.
What was going on there? Yep, a whole lot of blur.
Yeah.
That's what was going on there.
Well, Jesse, Angela, thanks so much for letting us intrude on your day here and giving us a look at where the magic happens with these firearms records. Really fascinating. I think it really helps us collectors to understand some of the trials and tribulations you go through to get those records to us. So thanks so much for the little tour, and thanks so much to the Cody Firearms Museum for inviting us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming out.
You're very welcome. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know I sure have. Until next time, happy trails from the Records Office at the Cody Firearms Museum. Now, if you're a firearms collector, I'd like to encourage you to become a member of the Cody Firearms Museum. Now, most people know about the access to the factory letters that you can get through the museum, but most people don't know that if you're a member, you get almost instant access to those records. We talked about the searches. So these searches, you can either call them up or email and get within a day or two the information that would come on a factory letter. Now, there's different levels of membership, and that dictates how many complimentary searches and how many complimentary factory letters you get each year. But it's really a worthwhile thing, you know, to be able to call them up and get that information over the phone if you're looking at a gun somewhere that you're thinking about purchasing. I mean, the cost of membership is a pittance compared to just saving you from buying one bad gun. So really consider that. And if you're a member of the museum and of the Winchester Arms Collectors Association, they throw in another 15 searches per year. And that's a lot of searches on top of whatever you get for your membership. So really a worthwhile thing, and it supports the museum. It's just a great museum there. There's also a whole lot of extra member benefits, as well as, you know, even when you go to visit the museum, you get in for free and your family with you. So, you know, and there's periodicals that come your way. There's just a long list of benefits. So really consider doing that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, happy trails from the Cinnabar.